Maybe you carry titles you never chose, but that stuck to you like labels that are hard to tear off. Ex-husband, ex-wife, ex-pastor, ex-criminal, ex-prostitute, the one who fell. The world loves to reduce people to the worst chapter of their story. Sin comes at a high price. Guilt, shame, silent pain, a wounded identity trying to survive in hiding. It's not just the mistake that hurts, it's the constant memory of it. Some people aren't afraid of being rejected, they're afraid of being seen. Not because they failed today, but because the past taught them that exposure hurts. There are choices that cost dearly, sins that left marks, stories everyone discovered and never forgot. Revealed betrayals, words spoken behind closed doors, lives lived in deception, wrong paths that turned into public sentences, and since then living has become a constant effort to avoid being fully known. What if the greatest fear isn't what you did, but what people remember when they look at you? Because some pains don't scream, they simply follow you. A past that insists on speaking, labels that cling to the skin, a deep shame that makes you hide even when everything seems resolved. Most people learn to survive this way, living at a distance, afraid of being seen, trying to prove their worth while running from judgment. And that is exactly where this story begins to cut deep. Because Jesus does not call you by the label the world gave you, nor by the title your past imposed. He does not erase what happened, but he does not allow it to rule who you are today. The story of Mary Magdalene is not about exposure. It is about a love from God that heals without humiliating, that restores without shouting accusations. A love that does not ask, "What did you do?" but calls you by the name God has always seen. The story of Mary Magdalene confronts this logic in a silent and powerful way. She is not reached by questions, nor by accusations, nor by public exposure. She is touched by a love from God that restores without humiliating, heals without exposing, and returns dignity without erasing scars. Perhaps this is not just one of the most emotionally powerful biblical stories. Perhaps it is the invitation you needed to understand that divine acceptance does not begin with explanations. It begins with presence. And when that happens, everything changes on the inside. A woman known by a label. Mary Magdalene is introduced in a way that hurts. The biblical text does not begin with who she is, but with what wounded her. 7 demons. There are no details, no explanations, only the mark. The pain is mentioned, not explored, as if it were enough to define her entire story. This is how a wounded identity is born, when deep shame begins to speak louder than a name. There are many people who are not remembered by their name, but by the labels of the past. The mistake, the fall, emotional rejection, the poorly told story. You become that person, that phase, that thing that happened. When pain becomes a label, identity disappears and the fear of being seen grows in silence. But notice this, the text does not end with her. It only begins to prepare the way for an encounter that changes everything. Jesus asks no questions. Jesus frees Mary Magdalene without interrogation, without exposure, without demanding public explanations. There are no uncomfortable questions, no curiosity about the past, no demand for spiritual performance. There is the silence of Jesus, the presence of God, the love of God acting with grace, without humiliation. It is an encounter where healing happens without an audience. In our lives, there are pains that do not need to be explained, defended, or detailed, only embraced. How many times have you felt the need to justify yourself in order to be accepted? Here, emotional healing begins without judgment, with a gaze free of accusation and a faith that welcomes. Love does not invade to expose, it arrives to restore. And when restoration without exposure happens, something deep begins to move within, preparing the heart for a new way of living. A gaze without accusation. Mary Magdalene enters the house of a Pharisee, a religious, formal environment filled with people who know the law but do not suspend their judgments. She walks toward Jesus carrying a past that everyone there knows or thinks they know. Every step is watched, every gesture is interpreted, every silence is accused. She does not go there to be accepted. She goes because she needs to be near him, even knowing she will be judged. Now notice the contrast. While the surrounding eyes reinforce the label, Jesus does not expose her, does not interrupt her, does not reduce her to her mistake. He allows her to come close. She weeps at his feet. She touches him. She remains. Where the environment demands condemnation, Jesus restores dignity with a gaze without accusation. And that is what transforms everything. Because being seen without judgment in a place where everyone expects shame is a profound form of healing for the soul. And it changes the path she begins to walk from that moment on. When shame does not disappear all at once, the spiritual restoration of Mary Magdalene does not erase the past as if it never existed. She is healed, freed, reached by the love of God, yet her name remains connected to the story that wounded her. The Bible does not hide it, does not edit it, does not soften it. It simply repositions it. Jesus does not change what happened. He changes where its weight rests. And this is how grace without humiliation works, without denying the truth, but without allowing it to rule. Sometimes not every healing erases the memory, but it can completely change its weight. A past that insists on speaking loses authority when divine acceptance redefines personal worth. Deep shame no longer dictates who you are, even if others still remember it. God restores without forcibly rewriting the story. And this silent liberation prepares the heart for an even deeper step of inner transformation. Remaining when others walk away. Mary Magdalene is there when almost no one else is. The wounded body of Jesus is still on the cross. The dream seems finished and the promise no longer makes logical sense. There is no expectation of victory, no answer from heaven, no guarantee of anything. Even so, she does not leave. While many choose to protect themselves, she chooses to remain, sustaining a faithfulness that does not depend on explanations. This remaining is not born out of obligation, it is born out of encounter. Job remained without answers, Jeremiah obeyed without applause, and Mary remains without guarantees. Those who have been touched by the love of God without exposure learn to love without bargaining. Perhaps you too are staying when everything in you wants to walk away, carrying a silent pain that no one validates. And sometimes this invisible faithfulness is the deepest sign of a real inner transformation. The morning that did not begin with celebration. It is still dark when Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. There is no expectation of a miracle, only the need to be near, even without understanding. She weeps, feels the loss, carries the emptiness of someone who has been touched by the love of God, yet still lives under the weight of grief. Restoration did not erase the pain all at once. Healing of the soul did not come as anesthesia. There is faith there, but there are tears as well. Even after an encounter with God, some pains continue to cry out. You move forward, you pray, you believe. But certain absences still ache when morning comes. Mature faith does not demand quick explanations or festive endings. It learns to walk through grief with the presence of God. It is not the denial of pain. It is a journey with it until meaning is born again. Called by name, still with her eyes filled with tears, Mary Magdalene hears something simple that changes everything. Jesus says, "Mary." There is no sermon, no long explanation, no reminder of the past. He does not call her by a label, nor by her pain, nor by the story so many repeated. He calls her by name. And in that moment, her spiritual identity is restored effortlessly, as if returning something that had always been hers. This reaches deep into our lives. When someone calls you by name, the past loses volume and deep shame loses its power. You stop being that story, that mistake, and that phase, and you become a person again. God does not call you by who you were, but by who you are. And that calling produces emotional healing, inner freedom, and a quiet transformation. From this point on, the journey continues differently, because those who know who they are no longer walk the same way. The story of Mary Magdalene is not about who she was, nor about the labels that tried to summarize her existence. It is about a love from God that chose restoration without exposure, that touched a wounded identity without humiliating, that brought emotional healing without erasing scars. Nothing was denied, nothing was disguised, everything was repositioned. Restored dignity did not come from eliminating the past, but from redefining value. This is how healing love works, in silence, with depth, without spectacle. Now the mirror turns toward you, because perhaps this story is not only about a woman in the Bible, but about your own journey. You may have been marked by deep shame, by guilt, by a past that insists on speaking louder than your faith. Perhaps there is within you a fear of being seen, of being fully known, as if exposure could destroy the little balance that remains. But the presence of God does not arrive with accusation. It arrives with a gaze without accusation and divine acceptance. And this is where everything becomes personal. The love of God does not shout mistakes, does not replay scenes, does not negotiate with pain. He calls you by name. When that happens, silent pain loses its power, personal worth is restored, and spiritual identity begins to take root. Biblical redemption does not erase who you were, but transforms who you are on the inside. So the final question is not theoretical. It is intimate, almost whispered to the heart. What in you is still afraid of being seen? If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments. Some restorations do not need a stage, not only permission, not as a beautiful phrase, but as an intimate recognition that something within you is being touched. Sometimes naming is the first step toward allowing healing to begin without exposure, without haste. Do not let the silence of this story end. There are many stories here waiting for you. Now I invite you to take part in a brief prayer. Lord, heal the shame that still weighs heavy. Restore the dignity that was wounded and free the heart from the names the past tried to impose. Give courage to be seen without fear, to exist without hiding, to walk in truth without guilt. May your silent love continue to do what only you know how to do. Restore from within with care in the right time. Amen.